Today, I'm so excited, I barely put a script together for this, because this is the Bambu Labs H2C, which is their flagship and most expensive prosumer printer, because unlike the H2S, which has one nozzle, or the H2D, which has two nozzles, or even a rumored P2D, which is two nozzles smaller, hopefully cheaper, the H2C has 7 total nozzles, because the right nozzle can be swapped out, letting you use all 6 in the Vortek system, plus the one on the left. You can use them all on the same print, although we'll talk about why you can't out of the box. I'm not just talking about 7 nozzles for up to 24 colors if your pockets are way deeper than mine, but combining PETG with PLA supports, adding squishy TPU to your print is just one example of what you can do with $2,400. Is it worth the price of admission? We're going to start unboxing to find out. You probably bought your own H2C to design your own products, but what happens when you need to scale? You need to reach out to PCBWay to print your design in bulk for the best price. You'll upload your STL, select options like material, color, infill, threaded inserts, and more. You'll be instantly quoted and production starts in a few days. I previously submitted for CNC machining, and after an engineer reviewed my request, the price was actually lowered a bit. Don't forget they also offer custom PCBs, and you can use my link in the description below for $5 off your first order. Let's go over what we got here while we unbox this. The box weighs about 45 kilograms or 100 pounds, and I have low ceilings, so this one's being done on the floor. When you lift the box, the first thing you'll see is the accessory box with spool holder, Vortek nozzles, some bits, and some bobs. There is cardboard, bubble wrap, tape, and foam all over this thing. Although I still somehow expected more considering the weight, size, and cost, but it seemed to work because I have no damage. Of course, once it's out of the box, you'll find our AMS inside, secured with a few screws and plastic. Due to the printer's height, you may want to do this on the floor anyway, because at 5'10", I was on my tippy toes reaching in for the screws on the back of the print bed. The H2C has a smaller build plate than the other H series at 330 by 320 by 325 millimeters to make room for all those extra nozzles. You could get a 10 or 40 watt laser for significantly more money, but I elected to save that. Supposedly, full AI path error detection should catch literally anything that could go wrong with your filament. This also includes things like spaghetti detection, nozzle clumping, and air printing. HEPA air filters, and fire-resistant chambers should things go catastrophically wrong. I like how the zip ties used are bright green so they can be seen easier, although I still missed one by the print head. The Vortek system had some zip ties and hidden black foam you should look for, and don't actually install any nozzles yet, according to the manual. You'll find your AMS accessories in the AMS itself, PTFE tubes, cables for power and data, and your power cable for the entire printer. The manual states that the AMS should go at the top of the two buffers because the top slot is for the Vortek system. You could use either technically, but just go get the H2D if that's what you want to do. What I really like about the new AMS2 is that the internal PTFE tubes are accessible without removing the entire internal unit, unlike the AMS1. And you'll also get an internal heater with this AMS that'll automatically rotate your filament as needed. Now, I never had an issue with those PTFE tubes like that in my AMS1, but I knew it was going to be a pain if I did because you had to remove the entire internal unit to access them. I also really like that the external spool holder, its PTFE tube, has a swivel head, so there isn't so much bending strain when feeding it if you get a little unconventional like I was about to later. Power it on, language, region, connect to Wi-Fi. One failed QR code attempt and the second one does bind through the app. Triple check all the foam and all the screws have been removed. 30-minute calibration. Then install your Vortek nozzles before starting your first print by lining up the pins and they just magnetically snap in. In my Snapmaker U1 review, I printed their example dragon and it lived up to the hype with 0 purge, excluding the optional purge tower and flow calibration, that is. Comparing it to the P1S that I have since sold, it was a massive savings in both filament and time. I really like this little model, and it tells me more than just running a simple benchy, because it still displays quality while comparing time and waste. I learned that Bambu's claim of 0 waste has a little asterisk next to it, but I promise you it's acceptable. Once the nozzles are set up for your print and you have enough nozzles per material in your print, then yes, it is 0 waste. On startup, if you need to purge filament from any of the nozzles before printing, then you'll have poops half the size of my P1S. Also, if you have say 8 colors and 7 nozzles, then one of those will need purged every swap, but thankfully Bambu optimizes that and will put the least used 2 colors on that one nozzle. So some pooping is required, and quote, no purge is a little cherry picked, but absolutely leagues above any other single or dual nozzle printer, including the other H series printers. Speaking of nozzles, this came with 7, as you'd expect, but one is a 0.2mm nozzle and another is a 0.6mm nozzle. I find the 0.6 useful and won't be using the 0.2, but you can only slice objects using one size. If I want to use the 0.4 nozzle, then out of the box I have access to 5 nozzles, because again, 2 of those nozzles are not 0.4 millimeters. I don't mind right now, since with 1 AMS and 1 external slot, I have 5, which I already have 5 nozzles for, but it may be a surprise cost for you. Dragon turned out great. I used questionable colors like glow-in-the-dark green and purple, a transparent filament I needed to use up, and an extra green, which gave me my first issue with the H2C. Now my green spool came undone, and since this was a refill, I'll blame it on me because it was me. But while dealing with this, I learned something about the AMS. The motor that pulls the filament only reels it back so far, and the sensor knows it's still there. And the final 3 or 6 inches or something is the motor that turns the spool to finish reeling it back. This means my jank setup to finish the last 50 layers was going to be a pain in the ass, but I didn't want to do this again, so I hung out and finished the retraction manually for each layer it was required. This also means you can't use larger spools and feed it into a lidless AMS, which was something I was thinking of doing. I think this is a solvable problem though, but that's for another day. One of my favorite tests is how much free performance can we get by using the provided slider to increase printing speed. The assumption here is that Bambu has constraints that it'll speed up when it can and slow down for things like overhangs when it needs to on its own. Yes, you can manually get more out of this printer, but most people won't, and the cube going from 12 minutes and 1 second down to 7 minutes and 41 seconds for a 56% increase, which is close to the 166% Ludicrous mode, is really good. The detailed boat tests quality while overclocked, and the print is the best yet with no visible defects, like even a bit of stringing. Originally 34 minutes and 28 seconds, then 166% Ludicrous mode brings that down to 27 minutes and 52 seconds for a 24% real world increase in speed, which is honestly pretty good for this. Using the comparison chart I'm building, my theory that it prints slower than the P1 series because of the heavier print head seems true, because the boat on the P1S was printed in 32 minutes and 39 seconds, while the cube is 22 seconds faster. I also found that the H2C was using 118 watts to print PLA, which is surprising because it's much lower than the P1S at 150 watts, despite being bigger, like heating a larger print bed, better electronics, and more LEDs. The H2C was a solid 118 watts too, because the others are rounded as they fluctuate plus or minus 5 watts. While Eevee is my last print, I want to talk about it right now, because I want to test all my colors at once on a big print, because my kids love the bigger stuff so much more, like the Ender Dragon that was bigger than my 6-year-old. With my daughter and I playing Pokopia, her new favorite Pokemon is Eevee. First one failed, which was disappointing. The supports in the back failed a few inches up, and the AI detection stopped the print, saving me a lot in filament because it ran overnight. But then again, also wasting this much, but it could be worse. This isn't my first failed support. In fact, I was going to talk about more on that later, but we already have failed supports in here on this new one, but it seems to be printing okay. So now that I'm done and editing, the model turned out fine, which wouldn't be sellable though because the failed support on the backside supported some tufts of hair that ended up being a mess of spaghetti I had to clear out. Unfortunately, I don't dare go get it for a picture because right now there's an itty bitty Poke committee and I don't want to interrupt it now that my son also has a replacement Pikachu. Side topic, this printer is really quiet. I couldn't be talking to the camera next to my U1, K2 Plus, or even A1 Mini. I can actually take Teams calls while next to this thing. Noise could be a major factor in your print farm or home office like mine. In a few videos, I hinted at building up to selling 3D prints. Not dragons at the farmer's market, but I had a request for shelves to display collectibles and refining it into something I can sell. Since this printer is for that production, let's talk about them now. Printed in PETG-CF, I can print 3 bottom sections or 2 top sections at the same time, which are all 300 millimeters wide. The PEI plate is too textured for my liking, but I can solve that with a smoother plate. Print quality was kind of disappointing. Well, let me try again. It was fine, but I expected perfect for $2,400. My inserts for this kept failing. And on the top part, not on this model, but you can see defects that may mean this print is unsellable. Okay, for now, that piece was for durability research, but come on. Again, $2,400. I dried the PETG-CF and still producing defects. The inserts were a little worse, although I did get to test object skipping. It's probably similar to the defects on the shelf, but the defects have a higher risk of failure on smaller objects. Both the desktop and mobile app will let you select an object to remove, and it'll skip the G-code for that object. Creality has this too, and I've tested it, and it works great, but I don't see it for my Snapmaker U1. One of the back failed, and I skipped it. No drama, but the AI camera didn't catch it. Later on, overnight, the printer saw that it royally screwed up and paused, prompting me to select objects to skip. Bittersweet, but I realized that I had to trash these prints because the measurements were off and I had to restart. I did order the Creality filament makers, so they will get recycled into filament I can prototype with, but I don't know about reselling with. I had PETG-CF in the AMS, and the left nozzle had an external spool of support PLA, which in my experience works amazing on my U1, but I didn't let the prints get far enough other than a little tip. The multi-nozzle is really saving me time and money when I give this a round 2. Oh, and with my K2 Plus, I have to remove the lid to prevent heat creep. The H2 has a neat little flap that'll open to cool the chamber. Neat. Another fun fact, you don't get any storage. My P1S came with an SD card. I had to provide this USB stick to store time lapses. $2,400. Is it worth $2,400? Well, I guess it depends on what you're printing. If you're selling a lot of multi-material prints, then yes, this could recoup the cost quite quickly. If you're only sometimes doing multi-material, then no, it's not worth the cost. The H2S can be had for $1,500 MSRP, and there is stiff competition at that price, although Bambu continues to prove that hardware and software is more reliable than other consumer brands. I plan on getting another AMS, replacing my 0.2 nozzle with a 0.4, keep the 0.6, and do my multicolor prints on this from now on with the U1 as backup, which currently does up to 3 color prints, and I like using the 4th as that PLA support material because the finish is much better. Are you happy with your H2 printer? What have you been printing on yours? Keep me updated in the comments below. If you made it this far, like, subscribe, and let me know how I did.